How many books did you read last year? 1, 2, 50, 100? What did you think about them? Did you actually get something from every single book that you read? Or did they kind of leave you wanting more or wish you didn't read them at all? In 2025, I read 9 books, which is 3 short of my goal of reading 1 per month. To be fair, I'm pretty proud of the results of that though. I did read these 9 books and I really enjoyed most of them. And today I'm just going to be sharing with you what books I enjoyed, what books you should read, and kind of what I took away from each one and which ones kind of left me wanting more. I'm Haidt. I'm a young engineer in my 20s, and I wanted to live a more intentional life this year, and I just wanted to share my experience of career, life, and relationships with you, and kind of what I'm going through so that way we can all learn from each other. So let's get into it. The first book I read in 2025 was Greenlights by Matthew McConaughey, and I actually really enjoyed this book. It was a great start for the year. This book is something that my wife, or then fiance, got me for Christmas, and I kind of had it sitting on my shelf for a while, and I was pretty interested in it. My roommate actually read it, and he was like, dude, I read like most of this book in one night. And this guy is not a reader, so that says a lot. I really enjoyed, in general, I just enjoy like listening or reading about people that are super successful in whatever field they are. So it's really interesting when someone like Matthew McConaughey like writes a book and you kind of realize that his success isn't by accident or by luck. Something that I really enjoyed about this book was just the casual writing style, and I love it when people just write the way that they talk, and it just makes it really relatable, and it almost like immerses you in their world. I'd say the biggest thing that I took away from this book is just seizing opportunities as they come, and that's pretty much what the green lights metaphor stands for, is like when opportunities come your way, it's a green light and you just need to take them. And so there would be nights that he had dreams, and then the next day he would be completely across the world because of those dreams. And I think we all wish we were a little bit more like that. The second book I read actually isn't in the stack because I lent it to one of my friends, and that is Extreme Ownership by Jocko. And I really enjoyed that book as well, and that's another one that I recommend you to read because it kind of reshaped the whole way that I viewed leadership and managing people. The whole premise of the book is people don't fail, but leaders do. And so as a leader, whether you're leading a group of students, a classroom, an actual team of engineers, or just your household, if the people under you are failing, it's not their fault, it's yours, and you need to take ownership of that. And I really love this principle just because, I was in some clubs and stuff in college that those principles really helped me as I was, leading those groups and those extracurricular activities. But also now that I'm in a full-time role, it makes me a lot more patient with people that I work with and coworkers that I feel like sometimes just aren't good at their job or kind of struggle. And I realize it's actually not their fault. It's the systems that they're in and kind of just the leadership issues that stem from that. So it's a really good book, and it's written by, 2 Navy SEALs that are like awesome and love their country and just stand for all the right things. So I really recommend reading Extreme Ownership. The third book that I have is The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F Word. So, right as you see, like very colorful book. You kind of get the idea right off the bat. But this book isn't exactly what you think. You would think this is some kind of like gimmicky, flashy book, but it's really not. What it's saying is you only have so much bandwidth and so much brain power and so much time in a day that you really need to be thoughtful of what you're giving your time and attention to and what you actually care about. So it was a really good book, but other than that, I didn't really love the writing style of this one. It was, and especially the language choices. But other than that, I thought it was a really good book. Definitely one worth reading. The next one I read was The Defining Decade, and this one is by Meg Jay, who is a psychologist, and she mainly works with people in their 20s. I thought this was a really interesting book just because, I'm from the rural South, so I don't really get exposed to what other people are doing, really, especially just outside of kind of my local little bubble. So she works with a bunch of people in cities where, people aren't getting married as early, where people are kind of delaying their careers, and they're just not really taking advantage of their 20s like they should be. And she basically just makes the case where like the 20s is what sets you up for success, and that's where you should be trying new things, exploring, putting yourself out there, and really just taking the chances now that are going to set you up well in your 30s and 40s. And the main thing I took away from this book is, I don't know, it really just shows kind of like the limited time that you have to make mistakes, because whenever you're in your 30s, you don't really have those freedoms when you have all the responsibilities and the families. It just really showed me how important my 20s are and how we should really take advantage of the opportunities we have now to make the mistakes, to be young. For me, it was knowing your 20s is all about not knowing exactly what you want to do, but trying things you want to do now and figuring out that's not exactly what you want, and you can just grow from there. And that's really what she pushes in here. So this is a great book that I definitely recommend. Now, the 5th book that I read this year is probably the one that's most impactful and one that I plan to use for a very long time. And this is the 12-week year. You see, it's not really that big. It's very practical. I absolutely love practical books. And this is one of the books that actually has like documented steps, processes, and actual steps to follow. And it has, in some spots, it has little lines that you can fill out, and it's almost like a little workbook in some areas, so that makes it super easy to actually follow the pages. I hate it when books say, hey, go out here and do this, and they don't really, hold you accountable to that. Where this, it's like, hey, do this, and then it says, hey, write a paragraph of what you want your life to look like in 10 years, and then you just fill out those lines, bam, that's done. Like, you really have no excuse not to follow what's in here. I really just enjoyed this book because I implemented it pretty much immediately after I read it in my life in college, and it didn't really work out the best for me just because life wasn't really stable enough to kind of implement something like this. But now that I'm married and a full-time engineer, it's great for me to follow to like reach my personal goals outside of work, and I actually really enjoy this framework, and it's definitely a book you should read. It's an easy read, very practical. Go get this book. Next book is Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell. This is something that actually one of my friends recommended, and I really enjoyed this book just because, like I said, I love to read why people are successful, whether it's luck, skill, talent, or any combination of the both. This one just really talks about why people are successful, which is so interesting. It talks about how most professional hockey players were born in January and February because they were bigger kids in their class growing up, so therefore they got to play more on the little league teams, so therefore they got to play more on the high school teams, got more exposure, and then they could go on to play college and professional, and that all of that experience just compounded, and they got more practice, more reps than anybody else, which is super interesting and super cool. And then it talks about experiences all the way up to like Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, and how they were in very lucky situations to be able to have computer access and be obsessed with the computers right before the computer boom, like the personal computer boom was about to take off. And so it just talks about how I kind of see a theme with these books is just like seizing opportunity and keeping your eyes peeled for those opportunities and taking advantage of them. So another really good book if you love understanding why people are successful and how people think. Next book I read is The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. Pretty good, a bit of a read. I honestly can't really remember you right off of the bat. I can't tell you exactly right off the bat what happened in this book, so obviously didn't leave that much of a lasting impression on me. But I did want to read it, kind of the same reason I wanted to read the Defining Decade book, was just I'm kind of infatuated with how our generation is and how my age group is as far as with technology, and how, the creation of iPad kids, like we like to call them, is actually going to affect our world in the future. So this was actually a pretty interesting read. He actually includes a lot of terrifying data about how kids feel lonely or depressed, suicide rates, and it all stems from technology. And he shows how all of those negative effects spiked right as soon as we got more social media and technology. So it's going to be really exciting, not exciting, but it's going to be really terrifying how this plays out and how kind of our generation combats this. I know a bunch of people I speak with, my friends, they want to avoid having giving their kids phones, iPads, all that stuff for as long as possible. And I think it's something we should really try to, just so we can have happy and healthy kids and do better for the next generation. So the 8th book that I read in 2025 is How to Raise Successful People. As you can see, I'm very interested in what makes people successful, and one day when I'm a father, I wanted to have a head start and just understand how to raise successful people and kind of what makes them happen. So this is written by Esther Woj. So she has 3 daughters, and they all went on to be super successful, whether it be doctor, lawyer, or in the tech field, I think is what they did. They went on to be super successful, and honestly, going 3 for 3 like that as a parent is super impressive, and why would you not want to recreate that? And one thing that I really took away from this book that I kind of agreed with, just like looking back on how my mom raised me, she let me be very independent, and that's what Woj really pushes in this book. She kind of talks about kids are a lot more capable than you think, and you need to give them more responsibility. If you expect them to trust you, you need to trust them as well. And overall, this is just an amazing book. Like, I would recommend it to anybody, like not even people who are interested in parenthood or anything like that, just because it's so great. And it has such a warm tone. Like, honestly, at some points, I felt like it was just my mom talking to me. And she was a teacher for so many years, so that definitely helped as well with the warmth and the tone. So definitely give this book a read. The last book I read in 2025, I probably started this book in like July. And it took me forever to read. One, because I started my job in July and I didn't really hold myself accountable that well to my reading goals. 2, got married, excuses, blah, 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 blah. The other reason is whenever I pick up a book, I cannot put it down until I finish it and start a new one, which is something I'm really learning from in 2026. If I don't like a book, I need to put it down. This is Antifragile by Nassim Taleb, and I really like the principles of this book, but it was so hard to get through just because it's so academically written, and I just feel like he would make very concise points and very thought-provoking ideas, and then he would just blab and blab and blab and blab about it, as opposed to just like making the points and letting it stick. So I would recommend this book. This book was actually recommended to me by one of my professors. So like I said, pretty good. Great points, very thought-provoking, and it kind of talks about how the world has natural chaos and natural fragilities, and the more and more we try to prevent those fragilities, the worse we tend to make them. We try to constrain the natural variation of things that Mother Nature has, and usually whenever we just tighten our grip like that, we completely lose control. So, good book. I've heard that Black Swan by him is significantly better, so maybe I'll give that a read and give him a second chance. But that's the last book I read in 2025. So those are the 9 books that I read in 2025. Obviously, I learned a lot from them. Maybe you can go and read some of these now. The biggest thing I learned was seize opportunities as they come. And 2, I will be putting down a book I don't like and moving on to the next one. So that way it doesn't derail my goals by like 5 months. So thank you for watching. I will see you in the next one.